Welcome to the Student Legislative Day Virtual Capitol Tour. My name is Matt Alley, and I'm a director of the Michigan Association of Student Councils and Honor Societies.
And I'm Bob Kefchin, the Director of Government Relations for the Michigan Association of Secondary School Principals. And today, we have a great virtual tour for you that we spent hours filming, editing, and putting together.
Whoa. You told me you were going to use the official virtual tour from the Capitol Commission?
Okay, fine, they did most of the work, but we did add a few things.
Bob, we talked about this.
It'll be fine, just watch.
Hi, welcome. I'm Matt Van Acker. I have the honor of serving as the director of the Michigan State Capitol Tour Education and Information Service. Our Capitol opened its doors to the public January 1st, 1879. And from the very start to this very day, it serves as a symbol for the strength of Michigan and what we are able to accomplish as an incredible state. And this building serves as a direct reminder of everything that we are able to do in the state of Michigan. I mentioned this was opened in 1879. This is actually Michigan's third state capitol. The first state capitol was in the city of Detroit. Detroit served as the capital from 1837, when Michigan achieved statehood, to 1847. And in that year, a decision had been made to relocate the capital city to Lansing. Some people sort of question why they would move from a major metropolitan area like Detroit to basically the middle of a howling wilderness, is what they referred to Lansing at the time. There were a number of reasons for doing this. One of them was to get our capital city more centrally located, to make it easier for people logistically to travel to the center of the state as opposed to going over out to one of the edges of the state like in Detroit. Another reason was we were very concerned about Detroit's proximity to the border with the British, with Canada. Fortunately, the British are wonderful friends and allies of ours now, but back then, you have to remember, we had fought the British in the Revolutionary War, and later on in the War of 1812. Many of the engagements in those wars took place in and around the Michigan Territory. In fact, the city of Detroit was surrendered to the British in the War of 1812. So we thought by moving the capital city up to the central part of the state away from the border, it would make it basically more difficult on the British if they ever attempted to capture our capital city again. One other reason Lansing was picked, and this may sound sort of ironic or kind of backwards, was the fact that no one really wanted to pick Lansing. It was sort of offered up as a compromise solution. Keeping in mind there were many cities in Michigan that wanted to be named as the capital, and no one was really pushing for Lansing. In fact, back then it was called Michigan. So it was kind of offered as a compromise. When the legislature first moved to Lansing, they moved into a temporary wooden building, which was a couple of blocks south of this location. There's a fine image of it here in the poster here. This was, from the very start, meant to be a temporary building. It was a small wooden structure, and the idea was that fairly soon the state would construct a capitol more in keeping with the greatness of our state. The Civil War intervened. All of Michigan's treasure, both its manpower and its money, was being spent on the war effort. So shortly after the end of the war, they started turning to talk about constructing a more permanent capital. This building is the result of that talk and that work. It was started in 1872, and after a long 6-year project, opened its doors in 1879. By the way, after this building opened, both of the other two capitals burned down through natural causes, I think we could say. Since 1879, this has served as the seat of state government. Sadly, through the years, there had been many changes to the Capitol, many attempts at modernization, and things in hindsight that were done to the Capitol that should not have been done to it. And I'll be honest with you, some neglect. It really wasn't being cared for the way it should have been cared for. As a result of that, they talked very seriously about demolishing the Capitol on a number of occasions. And fortunately, we think they made a wiser decision in spending some time and some money about 30 years ago to fully restore the building, bring it back to its original beauty. A large part of that restoration was restoring the building's original artwork, much of which had been painted over. Some places were told up to 20 layers of overpaint concealed beautiful Victorian designs. During the restoration, our artists stripped through those layers of paint and revealing exquisite Victorian patterns and faux finishing, pine and plaster that had been painted to look like walnut and marble. We were able to resurrect that artwork, to bring it back and restore the building to what it looked like shortly after it opened. This is a living, breathing building. It's continually changing. We're continually working on the Capitol. And in fact, right now we're in the midst of finishing up a major project to install the nation's largest state capitol geothermal heating and cooling system. We're also in the midst of a construction project installing a new welcome center, Heritage Hall for the Capitol, which we're very excited about. And hopefully when some of you come visit us in the next few years, you'll be able to see that new Heritage Hall. So again, welcome. I hope you really enjoy the experience, and some of my colleagues on our education team will be serving as your host in the next hour or so, and enjoy the experience.
I want to take a minute to come outside and put the Capitol building in a little bit of context. The Michigan State Capitol is located in an approximately 11-acre square of land in the heart of downtown Lansing. This location was chosen because it's on high ground overlooking the Grand River. Renowned landscape architect Adam Oliver designed Capitol Square to be a large grassy park-like expanse surrounded by an alleyway of trees. This provided a gathering place for Michigan residents and protected the Capitol building from any potential downtown fires. Here in the central walkway, we have a statue of Michigan's Civil War Governor Austin Blair. Austin Blair was very involved in the Civil War. He raised a lot of money to send troops off to fight and was very well respected. When he died, the citizens of Michigan began a massive letter writing campaign to the legislature requesting that they do something to honor this man. The legislature appropriated funds for a statue, and now his statue stands here in the central walkway. Beyond Blair is the Capitol building itself. Designed by our architect Elijah E. Myers in a Renaissance or Classical Revival style, the building was built from 1872 to 1878 and opened in 1879. Myers modeled our Capitol after the National Capitol in Washington, D.C., so the central dome and equal wings in both directions should look somewhat familiar. The central dome is made out of cast iron and extends about 267 feet into the air. The building is divided into 5 sections, a central block, 2 horizontal hyphens, which include the House and Senate chambers, and 2 end blocks. A central portico extends out, welcoming visitors into the Capitol building. Each story features columns of a different classical order, with more detailed columns located near the top of the building. This serves to draw the eye upward. While very elegant, the building was built with cost in mind. The building is constructed of brick and cast iron on a limestone foundation and then clad in sandstone. Towards the bottom of the building, the sandstone has thick false joints and a rough appearance. These false joints get smaller and the sandstone becomes smoother near the top of the building. This also serves to draw the eye upward.
Hey, so up here on the first floor, this is what the public was meant to see. And all this decorative art, this is what the building was originally painted to look like so many years ago, and time went on, we lost most of this. The paint started to fade away, it was peeling from the walls. You're going to have to touch up your artwork every now and then. But the people that worked in the building back in the old days, they didn't really have the skill nor the time to keep up to all this intricate detail, so they just started painting solid colors over most of everything, and that's how we lost it. It wasn't until they did a major restoration of this building 30 years ago they started wiping away layers of paint to show them the original color, the original design, and they repainted back to what you see here today. And that's how they found out they painted the wood in here to look like marble. So all this this reddish brown marble along the wall here of the Capitol, that is fake. That's just good old Michigan white pine painted to look like a more expensive material. And the columns rising up here from the floor up to the ceiling, again, cast iron, but painted to look like marble.
Hi, and we are on the first floor of the Capitol, right in the middle of the building. This big round room we're in right now is called the Rotunda of the Capitol. The easiest way to talk about the Rotunda is to start at the top and work our way down here to the floor. So glancing toward the top, what we have is the Rotunda Dome. At the top of the Rotunda Dome is a blue cap with stars on it. That cap kind of looks like an eye looking down at you. That is called the eye or the oculus of the dome. What we have up there are 110 stars painted with gold and platinum. There's no constellation to the stars that we know of, no design that we know of. We think they're up there for inspiration. So every day as we walk through the Rotunda, we look at the oculus, and we think about reaching for the stars. We think about what we can do today to make our state of Michigan a better place to live in. Right below the oculus, what you have are 8 goddesses. They are called the allegories or muses. Each of these goddesses represents something in Michigan we're always trying to reach for the stars on and make better. As we make these things better, our state becomes a better place to live in as well. So there's one goddess up there that represents art, one up there for agriculture, laws, science, justice, industry, trade, and education. Right below the allegories, what we have is the 4th floor of the Capitol. On the 4th floor are committee rooms. Below that is the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor houses the galleries of the House chamber and the Senate chamber, as well as our old Supreme Court chamber, which today serves as the Senate Appropriations Committee room. Below that is the 2nd floor of the Capitol, which houses the floors of the House chamber and the Senate chamber, as well as the governor's Capitol ceremonial office. Here on the 1st floor of the Rotunda, the most memorable feature for a lot of visitors is our glass floor. This is a floor made up of 976 glass tiles, each of the tiles roughly 5/8 of an inch thick. These tiles are held together by an iron framework. A lot of visitors will notice an interesting feature of the glass floor. As you head higher into the Rotunda up to our Rotunda rails and glance down at the glass floor from above, the floor is actually designed with an optical illusion. So the floor will either look like an inverted dome that dips down toward the middle, might look like a dome that rises up toward the middle, or a lot of visitors will notice waves that go around the glass floor in a circle around the outside.
We're standing in the Rotunda of the state capitol, surrounded by the replica battle flags, copies of flags that our proud Michigan soldiers carried with them on the battlefields of the American Civil War. The 1860 census of the state of Michigan listed her population at approximately 750,000 souls. 5 years later, by the spring of 1865, Michigan had sent over 90,000 of her father's sons and brothers to the battlefields of that horrible, horrible Civil War. 90,000 soldiers constituted 1/2, 50% of our eligible male population. 15,000 of those men lost their lives, never to return to their home state of Michigan. The Civil War battlefields were terrible, horrible, smoky, confusing, loud, dusty places to be. The only way a regiment could keep its proper alignment on the battlefield would be by being with what they affectionately referred to as the colors, by being with the flags. These I mentioned are replicas. The original flags were removed from the Capitol during its restoration and are currently in the care of the State Historical Museum, with whom we have an ongoing partnership to preserve and research and better care for the collection. In these cases are the copies.
And we are now on the 2nd floor of the state capitol. This is known as the Gallery of Governors. We do have portraits here that were donated by the governor, and we place them in a chronological order. So join me, I'd like to mention a few of these governors today. Here in the Rotunda is Jennifer Granholm. She is the first female governor in Michigan. She originally came from British Columbia, Canada, and spent her youth in California. She did graduate from Harvard Law School with great honors. She also became our Attorney General before she became governor. Now, there are many things in the governor's portraits they have that they choose, and I can tell you some things in this portrait that we're definitely familiar with in Michigan. As far as the portrait goes, you will see the wind turbine, and those are all over the state. We also have the Chevy electric car. There is also a graduate cap and tassel for her support in education. You may also notice the apple blossom, which is our state flower. She has a personal touch with her husband and 3 children on the bookshelf. And you may also notice the statue on top of the bookshelf, which is the Spirit of Detroit, and that's in downtown Detroit.
Hi, we're in the governor's parlor and the governor's suite of offices in the state capitol on the 2nd floor. Governors, since the Capitol opened in 1879, have occupied this space. In modern times, this space tends to be used for more formal occasions, such as bill signings or press conferences or possibly special meetings that the governor may be having. Traditionally, parlors, though, like the room we're in now, were used as a space to entertain guests. Even if you were considering a parlor in a home, they were a place kind of set aside, sort of a formal space that could be used to entertain special guests. And this parlor has been used for the same purposes for the last 141 years since the Capitol opened. Our governor's main office now is across the street in the George Romney building, and that's where most of the governor's staff has their space and their offices. So practically speaking, that's a more easily accessible and usable space than the space here. That being said, the governor would tend to use this area on session days, maybe when the House and Senate are in the building, in an attempt to stay close to the legislation that's taking place here in the Capitol. The carpet here and carpet all through the Capitol replicates the original carpeting, and we had spent a lot of time and concern making sure that this is a very close replica of original carpeting that would have been found in the parlor. This ceiling is one of very few that is original in the Capitol. Most of our original ceilings, sadly, had been lost through the years as a result of overpainting or as a result of overflooring. When the overfloors or the half floors were installed in the Capitol, as a way of lighting and ventilating those extra spaces, they wired and screwed drop ceilings and fluorescent lights to the original plaster and paint. And the weight of those ceilings through the years destroyed most of that original artwork. This ceiling, however, we were able to salvage as a part of the restoration. Took 4 people over 2 months to clean this, literally using Q-tips and cotton balls, inch by square inch, so as to not damage that delicate and original artwork. So hinges and doorknobs through the Capitol are really remarkable. You'll notice that they have our state coat of arms on them. This was part of Elijah Myers, the architect's original plan, and he incorporated our state coat of arms and the motto Tuibor from the coat of arms throughout the Capitol. Some of the hinges and doorknobs that you'll see in the building nowadays are replicas and copies of the originals, although there are still a few originals that survive. Really just an incredible attention to detail that Myers showed in his design buildings.
Okay, now all throughout the Capitol building we have these chandeliers. We have a total of 20 of them. We call them our Michigan chandeliers because we have an animal up there that kind of resembles one of the animals on our state coat of arms. But the company that made these chandeliers would also create a customized shield underneath, and the state of Michigan decided to go ahead and use the shield that is in our state coat of arms with that Latin inscription Tuibor across it. So if you ever look at our state flag and always wonder what that Tuibor means, it's a Latin phrase to mean I will defend. Okay, I will defend Michigan, I will defend the United States. Now when they hung these chandeliers up here is 1878, the year the building was being finished. This is still another year to go before Thomas Edison perfected his light bulb, so these were originally gas-lit chandeliers. And you can still see how they used to turn them on. If you look underneath the glass lanterns, you're going to see these triangled brass keys. Well, they would reach up and they would turn those keys and they could release the gas into the lantern, and they're self-igniting. I mean, you just kept turning them. There was the click to create the electric sparks. They ignited the gas. They just flared right up. So it was very simple to go through the Capitol building, turn the gas lighting on. Okay, now gas lighting was not very bright compared to those newfangled light bulbs that were coming out. So this building was only about 25 years old by the time they finally converted it completely over to electricity so they can use the much brighter light bulbs.
So we are now on the third floor of the Capitol in the biggest room in the building. This is our chamber for the Michigan House of Representatives. Here in Michigan, our legislative branch is split into two parts. We have our House of Representatives here and our Senate on the other side of the building. In the House of Representatives, we have 110 state representatives, each one representing districts of roughly 100,000 people. That's compared to our Senate across the way with 38 state senators, each one of them representing roughly 300,000 people. So about 3 times the amount per senator. Representatives can serve 3 terms of 2 years for a lifetime limit of 6 years. That's compared to the Senate, where senators can serve 2 terms of 4 years for a lifetime limit of 8 years. Looking here at our House chamber, the desk on the floor you can see behind me, the basic layout of the desk based on U.S. Congress with our 2 major party system, Republican Party on the right-hand side, Democratic Party on the left-hand side. If we ever have any independents or third-party representatives, their desks are put toward the middle of the room. The party leadership sits at the front row, right in front of the big curved desk. That curved desk is called the front rostrum, and the parties pick their seating order towards the back from there. At the rostrum, we have House clerks who sit at the computers, and they keep track of all the bills and all the attendance that is taken during session. And then the big black chair on the wall behind that belongs to the Speaker of the House. The Speaker of the House is the majority leader, picked every 2 years by the majority party. Above the Speaker's chair, you can see our beautiful coat of arms painted in gold. Right on that plasterwork on our coat of arms, 3 big animals, a moose on the left-hand side, an elk on the right-hand side, and the bald eagle right up top. Over in the corners of the chamber, you can see the 5 brown desks that face us on the floor. That's called our press boxes. That's where our press and journalists can work on the floor during session to help cover the meetings for us so we know what's going on. On the walls behind the press boxes, you might be able to see big dark red rectangles kind of hidden or blended into the wall itself. And if you see those are our voting screens. We have 2 in the right-hand corner and 2 in the left-hand corner. When they're not in session, those screens are turned off and camouflaged into the wall. But once they actually begin the session, those screens light up just like your normal computer screen. And that way, the public who comes to watch the session up here on floor 3 in the viewing gallery can follow along and see who's here, who's not, who's voting yes and who's voting no. When the representatives are in session, they're voting in these meetings, they actually have buttons at their desk they can press, a fully electrified voting system. 5 buttons in total: green to vote yes on the bill, red to vote no on the bill, white to call for a page to help them out or assist them during session, a black button to vote no on the bill and explain why, to have their answer printed out in the journal. And then finally, a gold button is to change or reset their vote. They voted yes but meant to vote no, that vote can be reset. Of course, being here in the House of Representatives, we are in the legislative branch, also known as the lawmaking branch. It is the job of our representatives and our senators to both craft new bills to try to turn them into our new state laws, but also to appropriate our money. Once the representatives or senators come up with a good idea for a new state law, they draft a bill. That bill is introduced during session in both the chambers, and once it's introduced in the chambers, it then goes through what's called the committee process. Legislative committees are groups of legislators who are experts on specific topics, such as education, transportation, tourism, our natural resources, and these bills go to those committees of experts, and they are discussed and voted on. And if the bills pass these committees, they come back here to the sessions in the chambers, and from there, the rest of the representatives, the rest of the senators will discuss this bill, and if they like it, they can vote on it. And if the bill gets a simple majority, if it gets at least 1 more than half of the members to vote yes on it, the bill passes one chamber, moves to the other chamber. If it passes in the other chamber with a majority, it then moves to the final step of the lawmaking process, which is the executive branch, the governor's office, where the governor can either sign it into official state law, or the governor can say no to it. The governor can veto the bill. And if the governor vetoes the bill, it does not become a law, unless it's overridden by the legislative branch, in which case there needs to be a 2/3 majority vote in both the House and the Senate to override that governor's veto. And that's simply how a bill becomes a law.
We're now on the third floor of the Capitol building in one of the rooms that has changed the most in the way our state government uses it. When the Capitol first opened in 1879, this room was part of the Library of Michigan. In fact, the library took up 3 full stories of the Capitol's west wing. There was an open space in the middle of the west block with galleries or mezzanines going around the outside walls, and the whole thing was topped with a skylight to let in as much natural sunlight as possible. This was a significant amount of territory in the early Capitol, and it illustrates how important the library was to state government. In a time before Google searches, emails, and a 24-hour news cycle, the library provided valuable sources of information for state officials and their staff members, helping them to make better informed decisions and keep up to date with what was going on in the U.S. and around the world. What made this space very unusual at the time is that it was managed by a woman. Harriet Tenney was appointed our state librarian in 1869, making her the first woman to lead an executive department in Michigan and only the second woman to head a state library in the country. And Tenney herself was aware of this groundbreaking position. In her 1870 report, she noted, by the advice of the chief executive of the state and the unanimous consent of the Senate, this library was placed in charge of a woman, and she capitalized W-O-M-A-N. Tenney went on to serve as librarian for 22 years, being reappointed by 7 different Michigan governors, and she grew the collection to include over 56,000 volumes. The library continued to expand, and by the early 20th century, the collection was simply too large to fit in the Capitol building. The library moved out in 1923, and the rooms in the West Wing were given over to the judicial branch. Solid floors were installed to provide space for justices and their staff, and a law library was put into the second floor. Similarly, however, the judicial branch decided that the Capitol could not provide enough space for them, and they moved out in 1970. At that point, the West Wing was taken over by the legislature, who subdivided the space into overfloors, providing individual offices for senators and representatives. This third floor room alone held offices for at least 10 legislators and their staff members. During the 1987 to 1992 restoration, these overfloors were removed, and the larger spaces on the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd floors were retained as conference rooms to be used by legislative committees and other groups. This 3rd floor room is now mostly used by the House Appropriations Committee, whose members sit at the desks behind me. The Appropriations Committee, of course, is part of the budget process for the state of Michigan.
We're going to end our tour today here in the Senate. Now, the Senate and House of Representatives are a lot alike. Both groups vote on our ideas for laws, so the rooms look a lot alike too. The first big difference you'll notice is with the number of desks. Since we have 38 senators, we only have 38 desks in here. They're spread out a little bit more, and you'll notice a small chair facing back towards us. Senators are allowed to have a staff member on the floor with them during meetings. Representatives are not, and there's one simple reason for that. You can't comfortably fit another 110 people in the House of Representatives. Another difference you'll notice is with our voting screens. We only have one computer screen on each side of the front because you only need one screen to fit 38 names. In addition to these differences, there are also a few procedural differences between the House and the Senate. When we vote on our ideas for laws, we have an equal number of representatives and an equal number of senators. In the House of Representatives, if there is a tie, if 55 representatives vote yes and 55 representatives vote no, a tie means no. There's nobody to break a tie in the House of Representatives. Here in the Senate, however, if we have a tie, if 19 senators vote yes and 19 senators vote no, the lieutenant governor can cast a tie-breaking vote.
Thank you for joining us on this virtual Capitol tour. Our state capitol is really an amazing place, not only for its history and architecture, but also because of the place our state laws have been made for the last 140 years and continue to be made today. We hope you enjoyed the tour and maybe even learned something. We could not have done this without the work of the Michigan State Capitol Tour, Education, and Information Service. While we did edit and shorten their official virtual tour to work out the format here today, you can watch the full video on their website. They also have a virtual tour that takes you up inside the Capitol Dome, a place that is not open to the public and is only accessible via the virtual tour.
Actually, Matt, I went up there before they stopped giving tours.
Yeah, whatever.
It was pretty awesome. You totally missed out.
Goodbye, everyone. See you after lunch.